Cell's second attack of his auto combo has a change to it. Previously, there was always only one single behavior. Basically, he would come at you with a lariat-style move. With a third hit of his auto combo being a command grab of sorts, this meant that you didn't really have too many opportunities or spacings where you could actually make this work for a mix-up. Of course, people with certain assists would be able to actually weave this into some combo routing in order to get the pop-off hit here, but it was generally sort of a niche thing that was reserved for some team compositions for Cell, and you really only see his auto combo being used to extend his pressure against Reflect, since he has some amazing buttons to deal with that. Like many other auto combos in the game, you can now change the behavior of Cell's auto combo by holding forward as you press the second button. So currently, this is what it looks like if you don't hold forward. It's the same old auto combo we've known for the last 7 years. And now here's what happens if you hold forward. Cell kind of winds up the lariat in place, and this has a couple of changes and properties to it. So, for starters, you actually go farther. As you can see there. This also means that Cell has, I think, the only auto combo of the game where you can technically perform 3 different variations of the second attack, because if you do 5L, 5L, and then hold back, you can decrease the range. And now you can increase the range. You'll also note that on block, Cell's +1 here, so he's actually able to use this as a pressure reset tool. And there's also more properties on hit. So the uncharged version, if you will, does 700 damage, while the delayed version does 850 damage. So it actually does a little bit more damage, which could mean that if you do catch somebody with this, you definitely kill them. I mean, it was already a forbidden starter, as we referred to it back in the day, and it certainly is like the ultimate forbidden starter. Now, maybe not the ultimate, but you get the drift. Outside of that as well, there's one more application you have for this in terms of Cell's pressure. You can now cancel out of this on whiff as well and go for a tick throw on the opponent. Of course, once the opponent knows this is coming or they know to look for it, it might not work all the time, but certainly in some situations, or at least early on in this patch's life cycle, you might be able to sneak this in from time to time. Not only does it have implications for Cell's pressure and mix, but this also has some implications for his combo game, because if you ever want to end combos by getting the last hit of your auto combo into, maybe like a command throw follow-up or some other special move with how they've changed this, you used to have to rely on particular assists in order to get that. At higher hit stun decay, this sort of link wouldn't really work, but now you could potentially skip those tricky hits at the very end in order to go right into it. I'll have some examples later on in the video when we talk about a couple other changes that sort of come together in a little bit of synergy. So this isn't all that you can do with it. Keep that in mind as we talk more about Cell's other changes. The next change to look at is Cell's 5M. You can actually Gatling this into 4M. Just like that. And previously, the timing of it would be a little bit slow, I would argue. You can get it to be about 16 frames startup for the second hit. The fastest one in the old patch, which meant there would always be a gap. About a 1 frame gap here. So while the opponent couldn't usually get away with a frame 4 reversal, they would be able to bust out with a DP reflector, something like that. So, I mean, it was an option to go for, and it worked naturally as a frame trap, which was attractive. So definitely some uses in Cell's toolkit, but if you ever committed to this one, you always had to just accept the fact there was going to be a gap. So for this buff to 4M, Bandai has sped up how quickly Cell actually cancels into this. As you can see here, the fastest timing I'm able to get is about frame 11, so it's a 4-frame difference, which effectively means you can now true string this option, just giving Cell another normal for him to pressure the enemy with. It does give you the flexibility of still being able to stagger this to create a gap for a frame trap, but it also just lets you true string this right in here. So not sure how big of a change this actually is, but it's still sort of appreciated there, where you can keep the opponent guessing as far as when does a frame trap come, right? So kind of a neat change. The next move to look at is Cell's crouching medium attack, which was a pretty decent normal in the previous patch. It had good range to it, namely making it great as an anti-reflect tool. Since it allowed you to get it back in on the opponent. And it had some pretty decent stats as well. 12 frames startup is not too bad for a medium. In addition to that, it kind of really didn't see too much like uses in neutral. I mean, it's pretty low to the ground. I don't know how many active frames it has off the top of my head, but, you know, this wasn't like a esports normal, like a Vegito normal or a Gogeta 2M, anything like that. But it was still a really good button for Cell to have, especially for his offense and pressure. The buffs to crouching medium are as follows. The attack is faster, so instead of a 12-frame startup, it's now 9-frame startup, which certainly makes it a little bit tricky, and might actually affect some of Cell's anti-reflect game. It also means that it's easier to true string with this move, of course. And because it's faster, it might mean that Cell could be beaten by one reflex in situations where he wasn't before, just because of like how much faster it is, right? But it also means that the move is just a little, you know, scarier to deal with. And you got to think, at point-blank range, you can also consider using this as part of your Super Dash mix-up now. Let's just have him guard all to make things easier. So this means that basically Cell is able to threaten you with true high-low 50-50s with a medium starter. And of course, if you apply this in mid-screen, it is still like a little bit slower to connect, about 11 frames as we saw there. Oops, that was me getting Hellstrike. But there might be some applications for this where previously it didn't really work there. I haven't fully stress tested this. I'm merely just sort of postulating the idea of it. But it certainly seems to be quite good. With the faster startup, they've also increased the attack's duration. So Cell kind of scoots in now. Like, this is kind of like a proper esports normal, if you would. So this should mean it's better at being able to consistently anti-reflect. And also, I mean, Cell can sort of be here at full screen and then approach you and almost get in, sort of similar to like Gogeta's 2M. I don't think the hitbox is as good as Gogeta Blue's 2M, but it's certainly something that's there to give Cell a little bit more of a dangerous presence in neutral. And of course, this, again, ties in with what I was talking about with the Super Dash mix-ups. Where, you know, this could be pretty terrifying for Cell, actually. Let's move on to Cell's crouching heavy attack. This crouching heavy has been notorious from the game's inception for being pretty bad at anti-airing cross-ups due to its lack of horizontal range. Cell remains completely stationary as he does this move, and so if the opponent actually runs up and does a cross-up on you, and you're holding, like, down back, then you are more likely going to whiff this move completely and give the opponent an opportunity to punish you very heavily for trying to anti-air with this move. Just like in this situation. So if you had meter, you could go for a vanish scramble, probably eat a 2 heavy punish. If you didn't have meter, well, the opponent got like a medium or heavy starter on you because you just whiffed this attempt to try and anti-air. This usually meant that if Cell wanted to deal with the cross-up, he had to settle for either blocking the cross-up or trying to perfect attack in the correct direction. Which is easier said than done in a real match situation because that's a lot more inputs that you have to be doing. This was kind of always an intended weakness for Cell early on in the game's life, but with the power scale of the characters in this game going on, it kind of feels like a little bit archaic and something that I guess Bandai thought needed to be addressed here. To remove this weakness, they've given Cell a new version of 2 heavy. If you press down and forward while you do this, Cell will now lunge forward. This effectively means that he no longer has to worry about whiffing his anti-airs against cross-ups. Since he's going to slide right into you. Some other characters like Gogeta 4 have received this buff in the past, and I guess Bandai thought, you know what, Cell deserves this too. Like, give this man a good anti-air button. Again, like, he already has great options with perfect attack, but dealing with cross-ups, he kind of just had to hold pressure, and if you committed to 2H, then you are putting yourself at risk. This removed the ability for Cell to rely on using things like Too Heavy to option select between someone dashing in and going for a Dragon Rush, then letting you tech the throw with Dragon Rush, or anti-airing a cross-up. Now, Cell doesn't really have to be scared about using those option selects. He can just safely anti-air these cross-ups. A side effect of this change is that Cell also has a pretty devious car cancel into Dragon Rush for a lot of range. So that's another tool for him to use within the kit if you're able to execute it. I don't think it's as good as Vegito's 3S Kara into DR, but I mean, Cell has this, and this is just another way to throw the opponent off with the visual of Cell sliding forward from that 3 heavy. Another change to Cell's crouching heavy attack has to do with the stun time he puts the opponent into when the move isn't used in a smash launcher situation. So previously, there really wasn't a lot that you would see come out of this one. I never really saw Cells use this in their combo game when, you know, they got later in their combos or anything like that, because you just don't really get much off of this in previous versions of the game. Pretty much anything I could think of to try and link this into, it just doesn't work. You pretty much like need some sort of assist in order to actually get a follow-up here, at least in the older versions of the game. So now let's take a look at the new hit stun time when 2H connects outside of a smash launcher. It seems like a little bit longer, but I'm having a hard time finding any sort of useful links off of this. It's like, again, the dummy kind of just flies too high up for you to link anything that you would like to link. I have been able to link into that level 1 before, but it does feel a little bit tricky and more dependent on height stuff. Maybe there's some more optimal examples of this where you want to fit it in, but I just don't really see any sort of big, major useful cases for this. There might be something with sparking cancels that I'm missing here, like the ability to go for a jump cancel. But I'm still hard-pressed to really find anything there. So it's a change, it is documented in there, but I don't really have any sort of match practical or useful examples that I've been able to find. If you've been able to find something, let us know in the comments. In the previous patch, Bandai Namco added a light version of Cell's Hellstrike attack, tying it to down light. And genuinely, this move was completely and utterly useless. I genuinely don't know what they were thinking with this move, except for maybe like nerfing some instant air dash OSs, where if you make the opponent guard, you put them into a mix-up like this, right? And you're trying to hold like down and light. You know, if you went just straight down instead of like down forward, then you could completely screw up your whole mix-up or go for some delayed overhead. But looking at the situation, even if you did hit with this attack, you know, you're +2 here. It's not like you were able to get a combo unless you spent a banish. Because this is coded as a special move. It's not special cancelable unless you're in Spark. And with how slow it is, I mean, it really wasn't great for mix-up opportunities. And the timing with the medium version was way too different for it to effectively be a mix. Right? About a 6-frame difference, both of these very reactable choices, and it didn't really fit anywhere into Cell's combo routing. Not that you really see this in Cell's combo game anymore, thanks to all the changes over the years, but if you try to plug this into some of his old school Season 1 routes, I actually have to try to remember them. The medium version would work fine. And the light version would just completely fail. Like, this was such a bizarre addition to Cell's kit. It seemed like it served no purpose. It didn't have any advantages over the medium version. It just, what are we doing here, was sort of my attitude when I first saw this move. And it seems like Bandai has realized that, yes, they gave Cell absolutely nothing with this move, so they have given it quite a number of buffs. And let's take a look at that. It seems like Bandai wants people to use this version of Hell's Strike, so they've given it 2 key buffs. The attack is now faster, and the landing recovery has been reduced. So instead of being 6 frames slower than the medium cross-up, it's only 3 frames, which is pretty nice. But you're also going to note the frame advantage here. Thanks to the reduced landing recovery, Cell's now +8. With good timing, you're actually able to link off of this. So if you do hit the opponent, you actually get a full combo. Although this does lead to the funny situation where you get a meterless confirm off of the light version, but off the cross-up medium version, you don't really get anything here. This also does mean, though, with the decreased startup, that you're actually able to get this to work in some combo routing that you couldn't before. But where you would really fit this in for some of your combos is something I kind of have a hard time seeing. Maybe there's something in the corner that you can go for flashiness, but I kind of think that most of Cell's combo routing avoids using this move in general overall. It is also worth mentioning, though, that on block, it's also pretty good. The medium version is still -3, so Cells gives up the turn, but on the light version, Cell's actually +3, you can take the turn. Now this is sort of a weird situation where the medium version of Hellstrike is the worst version of this move. You want to go for light pretty much every time. Because, you know, if you're able to just jump in on the opponent and they don't 2H you for doing this 36-frame startup move that, you know, has a very clear audio cue, you're actually able to get some offense started. Do I recommend doing this all the time? No. A savvy opponent's going to be able to react and either reflect you, possibly punish you for that, anti-air you, or just, you know, kill you for going for this. But, you know, a little cheeky teleport every now and then to give you some plus frames might be worth going for from time to time. So it's kind of nice. Maybe there's some uses for this move, but it's just weird that this newly edition of the move, the new edition of the move is what I meant to say, is kind of better than the old version now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they give the cross-up version similar treatments just to, you know, unify the purpose of these moves, potentially. Let's look at the next change, which is to Cell's command grab Psycho Crash. Previously, this was a 26-frame startup command grab that had enough hit stun to it where you could actually pick up some combos with it, though this would be a bit limited depending on where the move hit. If you caught an opponent cheekily with this at full screen, well, you wouldn't really be able to fit in like a Kamehameha. If you wanted to pick up a hit like this, you generally had to either level 3, vanish, or use an assist. So, regardless to say, like, it would cost some resources. This also meant that you couldn't really use it in the middle of a combo. Again, without having the resources on hand. But in the corner, there was a little bit more combo potential with the move. That's a very basic example, but again, if you push the opponent outwards, say like you did 5 heavy, then confirms got a little trickier. You generally had to rely on a Ki Blast pickup here. With the proper timing, you can get that 2S to link and then go into the Kamehameha and do a variation of loops. Generally speaking, I would often see most Cell players, myself included, weave in a Psycho Crash at the end of his combos to extend them a little bit more, especially with assists. You could go into supers from that point, but you were also actually able to link into a Dragon Rush in the previous patch, provided you had the right set of circumstances. This would usually depend on what kind of assist you were using with Cell. Generally, assists that pop the opponent upwards so that they would be launched higher into the air by Psycho Crash allowed you to get this link more consistently than some other assists. Now let's look at the buffs to Psycho Crash. For starters, they sped it up by about 3 frames. I say that because most of the time I get about 23 frames startup in training mode, but sometimes it reads 24. It probably has something to do with how I input the move, so we'll go ahead and just say it's 23 frames consistently. This does mean that it is a little more threatening as a mix-up tool or something to grab from full screen, but the bigger thing to look at is how the enemy now behaves on hit. Previously, they kind of fell straight down to the ground, but now they spiral in air, having a little bit more hang time because of it. With that and the increased stun time that they also give into the move, it means that Cell's actually able to pick this up without investing resources like an assist or meter. You can go for something like Kamehameha, but you can also just run up and confirm. It can be a little tricky to do. But it is possible to do. So I'm namely just showing you that you have two different ways of sort of going into combo routes off of this now. There is also then, because of that increased hit stun, some new universal tech that you can kind of apply here by using your auto combo. Without having the opponent off the ground, it doesn't really seem like you can do a whole lot with it, but at the end of some of your longer combos, you're actually able to now basically do combos that you would usually see in like Fenrich demonstrations where you have to build a specific assist to let you do that. But now you can just pretty much do that at the end of your Psycho Crasher when you use it in combos to get that extra little bit of damage and an extension, which I can see like people liking that and hating that. Maybe you hate it because, oh, that used to be a very specific thing that you had to have a team comp around or assist that let you do it. Or maybe you like it more because, hey, I always wanted to do that, but I never wanted to play the characters that would allow me to do that. So not sure which way you fall on that one, but it definitely gives Cell a lot more combo variety and utility. I think when you're solo, adding in an early Psycho Crash in them in order to just stack on the damage very early before scaling is a good way to go. And if you have assist, well, it means it's very easy for you to just add on even more damage and give you more ways of ending your combos. Cell's grounded Kamehameha also has a buff to it where it does more damage now. Previously, it did 1,098 damage. So let's see how much they increased the damage on his ground Kamehameha. 1,208, so somewhere in the ballpark of like 120, I think is about it, which is sort of nice. It just means that Cell does a little bit more damage whenever he fits this into combos. I mean, you know, it's a change and it's a buff. It's a very small one, all things considered, but I mean, Cell appreciates doing more damage, as if he wasn't doing enough damage already, but you know, that's the game at this point. Let's get into Cell's assists, which all have their own share of buffs, starting with his A assist. His A assist has always sort of been considered like an okay defensive assist, but fairly mediocre beyond that. You can use it pretty decently for combo extensions, but you know, 40 frames startup for a diagonal down air beam that didn't even quite fully reach at full screen. You can see that GT gets clipped here, but then becomes a very awkward hit of sorts. It wasn't really too ideal, and it seems like they wanted to try and buff that. A couple other properties to note in the previous version of the game as well is that, you know, you can see that Cell stays out. It gave you about 31 frames of block stun, and if the opponent got fully hit by it, you had a little bit of time to work with. So you actually were able to get, you know, some decent confirms, but depending on the situation, it could still be a little bit tricky. So let's look at how they buffed this assist. So let's look at how they buffed A assist. The move is a little faster now. Still a bit slow at 41 frames, but it is an appreciated change for the fact that it does come out faster. They've also reduced the delay, so I believe that Cell just is able to recover faster. Therefore, he gets off the screen sooner, reducing your risk of being happy birthdayed. There's more hit stop as well. So it should be even easier for you to pick up combos. In addition to that, there's also more block stun to it. 41 frames of block stun, actually. So this is actually like a proper lockdown assist. So if you wanted to go for any sort of like high-low mix-up or even some cross-up stuff, depending on the situation and characters, this actually kind of looks like a fairly attractive assist. Sure, you know, it still kind of struggles with having some of that neutral range to it, but I think the overall, these are some pretty nice buffs. Next up, let's look at Cell B assist. It's a perfectly fine lariat style of assist. I mean, pretty much just like the bare minimum average standard, I would argue. On hit, you had a little bit of frame advantage to work with in order to pick up the combo off of a wall bounce. But generally speaking, sometimes if the opponent made you block a move and you hit them with this assist, it could be a little tricky to pick up a combo at times. It also didn't really go quite full screen. In fact, it's a pretty stubby lariat style assist. So that generally just meant that you had to get really close in order for this assist to hit, which is pretty much like fine, I would argue, but there were some other lariat style assists that definitely crossed more distance than this. Looking at the buffs to his B assist, they've increased the travel distance and attack duration. So now it actually covers a pretty decent chunk of the screen. It's not as stubby as it was before. Which just means it's more of a threat to catch the opponent out sometimes, which, again, is sort of nice, giving Cell just a little more utility outside of like that C assist that we'll talk about in a moment. Additionally, they've also increased the hit stop of the move, meaning that it should be a little easier for you to pick up combos. And I believe it also means that there's a little bit more block stun to it. 35 frames here, so it might be a little more useful for you in some mix-up options. I mean, that's not too many frames off from having a 40-frame block stun, so I always usually like gravitated towards Cell B assist if I needed a fast assist, and it's just even a little bit better now, so definitely consider using this too. Lastly, there's Cell C assist, which I think has been his most popular assist for the past couple of patches, namely just due to the fact that it's pretty damn good. It's fast with good full screen tracking. It's able to pretty much catch a lot of jump heights that a lot of other C assists tend to miss. And the only thing it really kind of lacked was just block stun. But that's fine, you're not really using it for a block stun mix-up assist, you're using it to confirm hits in neutral or to catch a jumping opponent. The one thing I guess that I could say about it is that it didn't inherit Cell's invincibility through the move, so if the opponent was able to put out certain hitboxes, Cell could just get flat out blown up in some situations. Creating some unfortunate opportunities where Cell could just get completely blown up depending on how the opponent tried to approach you in neutral. So the way that they buff this Cell C assist is that they've now given Cell that invincibility he inherits from perfect attack in this assist itself, meaning that if you call it and it's able to come out, the opponent might not just be able to flat out beat it in some of these neutral situations. Obviously, there's not quite everything there. So the opponent's able to preempt it, they're pretty fine, but if he's able to catch at just the right moment, you know, not quite when he actually like teleports in front of them, but certainly a little bit later. So there's opportunities for Cell to actually just completely beat the enemy out, which forces them to pay a lot more respect to the assist when it's called. It's not infallible, as we've been able to see here, but it's certainly a little bit better. I think Cell C assist was pretty good before. It's probably his best assist, and I think it's got some decent competition now. It just depends on what kind of assist your team needs. This is a pretty big buff to Cell support value on teams. I genuinely think that this version of Cell is either the best version of Cell the game has seen or second best version if you consider the time period where he had a 4-frame invincible reversal on his EX perfect attack. There's a lot of really good changes for Cell here. He gets a little bit more belligerent neutral with the buff to his crouching medium attack. The fact that he gets a little more solo pressure with the changes to his auto combo, as well as some saucy new combo extensions, is also really good. I think that his damage is going a bit, which he already did fine damage before, but having Psycho Crash be even more useful in some of his combo routing just opens up some higher damage capabilities for the character. Hellstrike Light actually seems like a pretty decent tool to use sometimes, but I'm not sure how often you're really going to be use it. But I think that the most important changes here for Cell are to his assists. They just seem to have a lot more support value, because Cell's always been a character where he's sort of been like that middle character on your team, and his support value, though, that you would have wasn't really all that high. His A assist sort of just lagged behind other assists. His B assist was a decent strike lariat assist, but wasn't like the best standout, and his C assist was certainly one of the better assists. And all of those have gotten some pretty decent buffs. If you want a decent lockdown assist, A is right there for you if you want a good strike lariat assist. B assist there for you if you want an assist to stop the opponent from moving around too much in neutral, or to help you pick up like these full screen hits that your character might have difficulties with. Cell C is right there for you. Honestly, I'm really happy with this version of Cell, and I think that in the hands of some really strong players like Muzan, for example, who plays the character, he's pretty formidable in this patch with all the changes that he received. I've played Cell on and off throughout my competitive life with this game, and honestly, I'm trying to figure out a team for Cell to play in this patch, because I think he's really cool and he's really a lot of fun, and I highly encourage that y'all pick him up. I think he's pretty good in this patch.